And we're back to sit down and talk about a few more ways that you can develop your wildlife photography. My name's Toby, I'm a wildlife photographer here on YouTube. Also, you can see my work on Instagram. I've done a bunch of freelance work in the business world, the wedding world, and in wildlife photography. Today we're sitting here and we're going to talk about the practical part of wildlife photography. I'm going to give you a few of my key tips. These are tips that I use every time I go out, and I hope that by sharing these you'll be able to take them with you. But before you do, if you like this video, it would really help me out if you hit that like button below. So my first tip is going to be equipment. It's quite an umbrella term, I know, and you'll have heard this before, but your equipment is important. When you're buying equipment, you want to buy budget-friendly equipment, but if you have the ability, you want to look for things that, such as weatherproof. You want to look for something that's built solidly. You want to look for something that's going to have a long enough lens for your wildlife. You're going to want to look for a camera that has enough megapixels that if you were to crop it, it's okay. You want to look for a shutter that's either got a silent mode, if it's a DSLR, or a mirrorless camera that's silent. You want to look for something that's got a good battery life, because then your camera is going to last. And these are like the foundations: the camera, the lens. You want a decent tripod. I would advise getting a decent tripod, but you don't need the strongest, best tripod. My first tripod was about £75, but anywhere in between the kind of 100, 200 bracket, I think you'll get 80% of the quality in that price range. So a good tripod will make your life easy. Carbon fiber if you want it to be a bit lighter. Get spare batteries, get spare SD cards, get spares of these things so when you go out you know you'll have extras. And think about a good organizational system, because quite often I head out and I realize I don't have a battery or I don't have an SD card. Sometimes I've been filming videos for you guys and I've realized I don't have my battery. My camera literally won't turn on. What's going on here? You won't believe it. You actually won't believe this. I have no battery. Wildlife photography is quite pressured, and if you can get equipment that's going to alleviate some of the difficulty, that will help you to not only have more fun, but get better photos. And so let's talk about some rules when it comes to wildlife photography. And I say the word rule because if I'm out in the field and something happens and I need to think fast, these are the rules that I apply to my equipment to make sure I get the best opportunity of getting the photo. And the first one is shutter speed. It's to use the shutter speed, have it equal to the focal length you're shooting at. Okay, so if I'm using my Sigma 150 to 600 millimeter lens and I'm shooting at the 600 millimeter length, that means I've got a really long lens. I automatically will dial my shutter speed to at least 640. That's the closest to the 600 bracket. And that shutter speed will make sure that I have a high chance of getting a sharp photo. You see, when you have a long lens, you need to up your shutter speed because that long lens zooms you into a tiny section of something far away, and the tiniest movement in the camera makes a big movement in your frame. And so using a shutter speed that's 600, say, will at least try and get rid of that camera movement. However, I would then go a couple of hundred more. Generally, I shoot around the 1,000 mark when I'm using 600. So the rule there, and I say rule because this is the at least, the rule, not the ideal, the rule. So if I'm shooting on a 50mm, I'll have it at least 50. If I'm shooting on a 100mm, I'll have it at least 100. Don't worry too much about ISO. You're doing wildlife photography. Wildlife photography is crazy. You're all over the place trying to figure out what you should do, how you should do it, figure out the lighting. You need enough shutter speed. You need to drop the aperture. ISO, I don't know what to think. You just do what you need to do with it. And sometimes that's pushing it up. If you think of an elevator, they have the max elevator weight, the maximum amount of people you can put in it before it doesn't really work anymore, before it slows down. Cameras are similar. They have a max ISO. Now, you can shoot your ISO up into the insane reaches, right? You can go so high if you want to. But generally speaking, there's a point at which your camera starts to function less because of its ISO, that the image quality will drop because the ISO is too high. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the angle of photography and how this can help you. So when you're shooting wildlife, the angle is important. And I actually talked a lot about this in my previous video about the attitude towards wildlife photography, if you want to go and check that out. But A photo from down low can be empowering, a photo from above can be really cool, a different perspective, and eye level can work, but it's the most common way that we see wildlife, it's the most common angle. If you're shooting from the ground though, you need to think practically about how you're going to see what you're shooting. You see, if you're using a camera like the Canon 7D Mark II, which I do, it has a screen that's built in. And so if I'm lying on the floor trying to take a picture and then I put my eye to the rangefinder, or what they call viewfinder, that's it, I'm going to put my chin in the mud, right? And so I'll go into live mode to shoot from low angles, because then I can look at the screen from a distance and that angle allows me to see what I'm doing. The battery life will get drained much quicker if you use live mode. So if you're someone who shoots fully in live mode, I would encourage you to try using the viewfinder if you realize that the battery life is going to be restricting you. Now we're going to touch on some simple things, because we're talking more about practically wise, we're talking about your approach. I'm going to talk about how you approach wildlife, what you look for in an image, and what you wear. I'm going to touch on the wear first because that's a very simple one. Go in weather appropriate clothing. Have a jacket. I have a small pocket coat which I have in my bag at all times, and it means if it starts raining unexpectedly I can put that on, but it doesn't take up much space. Have boots, have a jumper. Lightweight stuff that's warm is going to be your best friend. You see, I've learned doing wildlife photography, the most important thing isn't it being compact, it's being light, because when you're carrying it around, size isn't the biggest problem. But if it's heavy, it can really shorten your trip. These are high-well socks, and as we're talking about the equipment that you should be bringing with you, I think it's important we think about your clothing, especially something that's often overlooked. High-well have designed socks that I would highly recommend if you're going out on wildlife photography adventures, if you're going out on hikes, and here's just a few reasons why. First of all, we're going to get the creative one out the way. They come in 3 different colours. You've got silver with a bit of black on them, you've got black with a bit of silver on them, and then you've got green with a bit of black on them. I love the green. I'm a huge sucker for green things. Now, these socks are made of merino wool, and that's one of the biggest pros of these socks. Merino wool doesn't carry weight, it's quick drying, and it's really good at regulating the temperature. Again, when you're walking, that's important. Not only that, these are thick and comfortable, and they have good ankle protection. Boots, as I mentioned, you also want weather appropriate stuff for your camera. So if you're going out in the rain, whether that's a homemade plastic bag cover, which I've used before and they're quite effective, or a purpose-built rain cover for your camera, I'd encourage you to look into and think about which one of these approaches you want to take, and have it prepared. Even if it's the middle of the summer and it's really sunny, don't worry. But there will be times where you think it's not going to rain, and then it does, okay? So it's worth being prepared just in case. In the winter, you want to make sure you're wrapping up warm. You want to make sure you've got hats and gloves, because when you stop walking around and you're just sitting waiting, that's when the cold's going to creep in. That's when the cold is going to suddenly hit you, and you don't want to have to cut that wait short just because you're cold. I actually sell homemade beanies that I make myself. They're on my Etsy shop. They're camouflaged, and you can buy them in all colours of seasons. So you can buy green ones for the summer or for when it's still green, like now. You can buy orange ones for the autumn as the trees are turning orange. You can buy a white one for if it's snowing or if you're in the mountains. Go check them out on my Etsy shop. They're a great way of keeping yourself warm, and they've really helped to support the channel. Finally, do think about the colour of what you're wearing. Think about camouflage. Think about not wearing something which is ridiculously bright. Think about wearing things that help you blend in. I'm a bit bored of talking about clothes. Use your common knowledge to put on appropriate clothing. We're going to move back onto, what did I say? I was going to talk about the way that we approach wildlife. So when I'm approaching wildlife, I don't want to approach it all big and bolshy, and actually it's quite hard as a vlogger, because sometimes I'm giving all sorts of energy and talking to a camera and presenting, and then a bird comes and I'm like, oh, I've just scared it away because I was speaking in my presenter's voice. Now, you want to approach wildlife as if, 1, you're very small, and 2, you don't care about it. Okay, now often, even I've had it with livestock, even sheep, when you bring your camera up to them, there's such an intentionality there that they can read it and they know. Sometimes I'll lift my camera and point it at something else and then move it to the wildlife, because that way it feels less like I'm pointing it straight at them. When you're walking up to wildlife, try not to be too loud. It's kind of obvious. Try not to bounce too much or do any sudden movements. You just want to gently walk. But in the way that you walk, you can also make yourself appear larger. Okay, and that's the same approach with when you see an animal. If you see something you want to take a picture of, don't stand in front of it, right? Try and kneel, crouch down, keep yourself small. Try and become non-intimidating, okay? Because we are humans, we stand pretty tall as we are. So that's just a small way in which we can try and minimize the fear that the wildlife is feeling, which increases our chances to get good photos. And finally, my last point was about the animal's behavior. I want to touch on how the animals behave can not only tell you how comfortable that animal is and how you can move closer, but also when you're taking your photo, look for behaviors. You see, so often we get stuck in this trap of taking the clearest photo with no obstructions, and it's like the clearest bird photo you can find. But we forget that actually, when you think about photos, the best photos I've ever seen have this story, have this action. The wildlife is doing something, and I think that's where you can find such power in wildlife photography. You see, there's so many photos of a robin just sitting normally, but those pictures where the robin is like pulling a worm out the ground and its wings are slightly flared behind it, they're powerful. And they're cool, okay? So when you go out to wildlife, try and look for behaviors, whether that's a parent feeding their chicks, whether that's an animal hunting, whether that's, an animal preening itself or cleaning in a puddle. I actually do touch again on this in much more detail in a video which I'll link in the description. There's gonna be about 3 videos in the description, but you'll hopefully be able to figure out which ones are which. I'll give them little intros. And yeah, you can read the animal's behavior, and that can help you to understand, can you get closer? Should you get closer? And 2, when's the right time to take the photo? So I hope this has been helpful. We've talked a lot about like the real kind of gritty, practical side of how to get wildlife photos. If you have questions, please pop them in the comment section down below. I would love to see your questions and be able to answer them, and other people will be able to chip in. It's a really great community space down there. And go check out my Instagram. I mentioned in my last video that when people follow me on Instagram, I tend to go and look at their page and I'll go through your pictures and like some, and I love to see what you guys are doing. And especially if you guys are hearing things and being inspired, or you want to feedback, Instagram's a great place where we can communicate, we can share our understanding and our pictures. So go over there. I'm tobywood.yt. You'll have seen it pop up along the bottom a couple of times by now, I'm sure. Subscribe and like this video if you found it helpful, and I will see you in the next one. God bless, guys.